Hey everyone, it's Carly Hall, and we are going to kick off the new year with an organizational project. I am working on my baby's nursery right now, and I'm labeling all of these bins in his closet. So I bought these clip-on bin clips that hold labels so you can easily swap them out. I have no idea what I'm going to put in those bins, so I'm going to make some labels today. But the cool thing is they're not permanent, so you can easily swap them out. So I found these on Target, and I will put a link in the video description, but you can see that they just clip on to those fabric bins, and they're really great to be able to swap out labels if you're indecisive like me. So I'll link them in the description. They're $6.99 for 3, so not too bad, and they're really high quality. I feel like they will last, and I can use them on other bins. So I already did the legwork for you. I measured out the area, and we are going to do a beginner print then cut tutorial today. So if you are a beginner and you've never tried print then cut, then this tutorial is for you. I will be going really slow. So for my advanced users, this tutorial might not be for you unless you need a basic print then cut refresher. So like I said, I already did the hard work. I measured out the dimensions. So we are going to cut labels that fit perfectly inside here. But then I also measured out the dimensions of these metal overhangs so that we don't get our text behind any of the metal so you can see the entire word. All right, let's get started. So in Design Space, we are going to start on the canvas, and we're going to find this shapes icon. If you're using a mobile device, you will still be able to do this full tutorial, but your icons may be on the bottom of your screen instead of the left toolbar. So once you find the shapes icon, click on that, and we are going to start by drawing our rectangle. So we're going to start with a square, and when it comes in, it will resize proportionately, and it will keep the square proportions. We want to unlock that by clicking the padlock here, and then go up to the top, and we're going to type in these exact dimensions. I'll also link to my canvas, so if you just want to find my canvas and use that as a baseline, you can absolutely do that. So the width that I'm using is 3.37 inches, and the height is 1.75. The color that you see on your canvas, when it's set to just cut, that is just representing the material that you'd be cutting. So it doesn't make a whole lot of difference if you're just cutting a material. But since we're printing it out, the color actually will make a difference. So my labels will be white, but if you want to change the color to a light color and use a contrasting font, or if you want to do a dark color and print a white font, you can do that. Again, I'm just being boring with a white background and a black font. So we're going to change the color by clicking on that swatch. So once again, you're going to highlight your image, come up to the top. There's a little swatch right here. Click on that, and then you can change it to whatever color you want. You also have advanced colors down here. Once you're happy, you are on your way to making a perfect label. So we have our outside dimensions, and this is the size of the label that we will print on. But in case you're curious about where you can fit your text, we are going to make a copy of this image. So if you know how to use your hotkeys, you can use that. Control-C if you're on a PC, Control-V, or Command-C, Command-V if you're on a Mac, or you can also use your duplicate button over here. Now the dimensions for the inside visible portion is 3.2, and we're going to want to make sure this padlock is unlocked up here, by 1.2. And then we're just going to place that on top, highlight both. To highlight both, you're just going to drag your cursor over both of the images, and we'll do that a lot in this tutorial. So getting used to highlighting multiple images is very helpful. And then at the very top, there are these align functions. So go ahead and click on that, and we want to center it to the center of the image. So that will center the middle rectangle to the outside rectangle. So this is our baseline template. So I'm going to group those together. The group holds images together on the mat so they can easily move around together and it won't lose that center alignment. So now if I click on this, it will move together. All right, so we have one label made, our template. So now we can add our text and resize everything appropriately. So I used to type everything in Design Space, But I just recently realized that the spell check function went away. So I typed out my words in a Word document so that I could make sure I spelled them all correctly. My brain, I'm usually a really good speller, but ever since I've been pregnant, my brain has not been as sharp as it should be. So I'm just going to highlight all of those and right click and copy those. And then we're going to go back to Design Space and we're going to open our text tool. So the text tool is on the left-hand side. Go ahead and click that and you'll have an add text here. You're more than welcome to type your words into the text box here. Totally personal preference, but again, I'm not sure where the spell check went. Hopefully it comes back. So to paste in my words, I tried to right click and I wasn't able to. So I am just going to click Command V on my Mac. It will be Control V on your PC. So we'll just paste those in. And then slowly those will show up here. So I have my words and they all came in. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can see, and I'm going to make these smaller so that it's a little bit more manageable. So once you have all your words, you can adjust the spacing and the font to whatever you want. I am going to use a Cricut font, but you can use a system font if you have a favorite font on your computer. So I'm going to click on the Cricut tab, and I'm going to use a font called Car Decals. I thought it looked like a cute little kid font. So we're going to change it to that. And then we have all of our words ready to be resized. Once you have your words in the font that you want, we're going to use this template. And you'll see that the words are on top of my template. But if for whatever reason they're not, you can click the arrange icon up at the top and make sure that those are sent to the front. And then you will be able to see them in front of your label. Now, this is a big pet peeve of mine, and it might only be me, but I'm going to explain it to you because I feel like it's something that I see a lot in the Cricut community. So a lot of people, I'm going to make a copy of my words so I can show you what I'm talking about as a visual aid. So these will be my real ones, and these will be my example ones. So say I have my label template over here, and I need to resize all of my words to fit in that label. What I see people do more often than not, I'm going to ungroup these to lines. So I'm clicking on the advanced options, ungroup to lines. What I see people do is they bring their word over and they resize it to fit in this area. So there's that one. So here's swaddles. And then they take bibs and they resize it to fit in that same area because they want it to be the same width. But if you notice, when you start resizing things to be the same width, for example, if I actually wanted bibs to be the true width of swaddles, we have this width as 3.13, and I resize this to be 3.13. Now, bibs looks so large, it doesn't even fit in my label area anymore, and swaddles looks so tiny. So what I recommend is changing everything to be the same point size. And what the point size is the actual font size. So you can see this font is 105 and this font is 34, and they just look really silly next to each other. And if those labels were all going to be in the same spot, it would look like I was trying to favor bibs over swaddles, for example. So that's not the way that I recommend doing it. So the way that I recommend doing it is making all of the point size the same. So my longest word is accessories. So I need to make sure that accessories fits into my label. So I'm going to resize this until accessories fits nicely in there with a little bit of negative space, just so that I'm not concerned that it's going to be too long. So my point size on this is 26.58. We'll just make it 27. I'm going to change it to 27 so it's a nice whole number. And you can see accessories still fits right in there. So now all of my letters look uniform and they look intentionally the same size, even though they all have different widths, but they're the same height. So it just looks a lot better in my opinion. So a pro tip, we are going to duplicate this or make a copy, and we are going to hide that on the mat. So to hide it, we're just going to come over to the layers panel and just click on the eye to close that eye. That way, if we need to add any additional labels, we have the option to easily add additional labels. We know the point size, we know the font, and we are not struggling to find those sizes again. So now that I have my words ready to be positioned onto the labels, I'm going to ungroup this because we've already used the template to resize it, and now we just know we need to center the word, so we can delete the inside rectangle. And then we're going to make a couple of copies of this outside rectangle. So I have 10 labels, so I'm just going to make 10 copies. We'll want to make sure those all are sent to the back so that we can have the text on top, and then we will be able to easily see. So our words right now are not ungrouped, so we do need to ungroup those. So I'll go to the same advanced options up at the top, this advanced toolbar. We're going to click ungroup to lines so that the words are all separated on lines. And now for the labor intensive part. So we're going to take our words and we're going to move them to the label, and you're going to highlight the word and the label and center. Once it's centered, you'll group it together so it just holds in place, and you'll just repeat this over and over until you have all of them done. It goes pretty quickly. So once everything is all lined up, we are ready to tell the Cricut that we actually want to print and cut these. Right now, it thinks that we want to cut a white rectangle and then cut a black material on top. So something like an iron-on or a vinyl, whatever material you're using. So if we click Make It right now, it will separate the white labels onto one mat and the black words onto another mat, which we know we don't want to do. We want it actually to be printed. So in order for the Cricut to know that we want to print then cut it, there's a couple of ways to achieve the same goal. So if I wanted to go one by one and flatten each of these images, I could absolutely do that. And I'm going to show you that way so that we can talk about an adjustment that we're going to make in a second. So we're going to highlight each one, and you can click flatten. And flatten tells your Cricut that you want to print out that image, and it will cut the outermost perimeter and any negative space if there is any negative space. So say you had a hole that you wanted to make this into a tag. It would cut that negative space as well. So we can go one by one and flatten these. And there is a reason that I would do it this way, but it's just to show you how to arrange them. So you can see now on the layers panel, it says cut and then print, or print then cut. So if I click Make It, it will look a little bit different, but you'll see that Cricut thinks that you can only fit 5 labels on each page. The print then cut parameters for the 8.5 by 11 material is 6.75 across and 9.25 down. So we actually can fit all 10 on one page, but Cricut will automatically put a padding around it and will recommend you using 2 pieces of paper, whereas I want to conserve material, so I want them all to fit on one. So let me show you how you do that. So we're going to cancel out of this, and we're going to move these over. So the parameters I just told you, we're going to represent those with a rectangle here, and we're going to unlock it again. The rectangle will be 6.75 by 9.25. All right, so now I have my labels, and I'm going to align these so that they're nice and organized. I'm going to change my canvas color so you can see what's going on. So down on the bottom right, I have this blank canvas selected, and up at the top, I have a color swatch. I'm going to change that to mint so you can see our labels. So I'm going to align all of these. So we'll start by aligning swaddles and toys. We're just going to align those to the top. So those are aligned, and then we're going to align these ones to the bottom. Now we're going to align this row, or this column rather. We're going to align those center and distribute vertically. And you'll see that now those are nice and spaced out. We'll group those together. We're going to do the same thing on the right. Align center horizontally and then distribute vertically. Now you can see they're nice and gridded out perfectly. So if I move these over onto our print then cut restricted area, you'll see that they barely fit on there. So the way that I get them perfectly aligned is I highlight my first column and the background, and I align that to the top, and I align that to the left. And then I'm going to group them together so they don't move. We're going to arrange that to the back so we can see our other column. We're going to do the exact thing, same thing on the other side. So I'm just highlighting my right column and the background material, and we're going to align that to the top and to the right. And then we don't want this gray background layer, so I can delete that guy out. Let me do that one more time a little bit slower. So it is grouped, but if I highlight the layer right here, I can just click delete on my keyboard and it will take it out of the group and delete it. So now I have my two columns and we can group those together and those will move together. And that was a little bit complicated, and I know this is a beginner tutorial, but I wanted to show you that you can conserve material, and I'll show you on the next step what that looks like. But if you wanted to just ignore this and print it on 2 sheets of paper, you absolutely can do that. And you can see that there is a tiny little gap between my labels. So they barely fit on there. And then just to double check, our width is 6.75, which we know is our max width that we can print. And our height is 9 inches, which fits in the 9.25 parameter. So I'm going to save this and call it labels. Okay, so we have it saved. And now if I were to click make it right now, we're so close to having it almost perfect, but it's not putting both columns on one page. So we're going to cancel out of that. And there's 2 ways that you can tell the Cricut that you want it to hold it together just like this. So everything is grouped together, which will hold it together on the mat. But in order for it to cut together, we actually need to attach it together. Attach is the function where it says, I want to hold this exactly the same way on my cut screen. So we clicked attach, and then we are going to click make it. Now on this screen, you can see that everything fits on one page and will be able to be printed out and then cut on one page. This black line is important. If you're doing print then cut for the first time, this will be the first time that you're seeing that. And that black line is a sensor registration mark where the Cricut will actually read it to determine exactly where to cut these labels. So you want to see that here, and then you'll click continue. I mentioned there's one other way to do this. If you wanted to align everything and then click flatten all together, so I'll just detach it so you can see. If I highlight everything and then click flatten, you'll see that everything up at the top says print then cut. Now I can click make it and achieve the same thing. But I just wanted to point out that attach does hold everything together, especially if you're not doing print then cut, but you can achieve the same goal by flattening everything together. All right, so now we can continue on and you can connect to your machine, but before you actually cut anything, we need to print it out with our printer. On the left-hand side, if you don't see print, then make sure that you go back and make sure that it's set to print then cut by flattening. But if you see print then cut, you're good to go and we're ready to send it to our printer. So we're going to click send to printer right here, this big green button. And then there are some settings that I want to talk about. So first you'll choose the printer that you want to print to. And then you have this add bleed option. Typically, I would tell you that you always need bleed on. If your background color is anything other than white, absolutely add bleed. Bleed adds a small little border of color of your outermost color. So if your Cricut cuts off just a little bit, there won't be any white edges showing through. So I always leave bleed on. I often see people recommending turning it off, but it's something that I always recommend leaving on. Now this icon is a little confusing, so we're going to toggle on System Dialog. System Dialog will tell your Cricut program that you want to open your printer settings. It's very confusing because when you toggle it on, really it should say open printer settings, not print, because we're not actually printing anything. So we are going to open the printer settings by clicking print. So this doesn't actually print anything out. You don't need to have your paper loaded or anything just yet. So when you click print, really think I'm just opening my printer settings if that System Dialog toggle is toggled on. So now I have my printer settings window that's opened. And if you don't see it open, it may open behind your design space, so you may have to minimize that to see it. So now we have our print preview, and we are going to adjust some settings. I like to feed from my rear tray. If I'm using cardstock, which I'm using today, it's easier for my printer to feed through my cardstock if it's printing from the rear. So if you have a rear feeder printer and it has other options, just make sure that you feed from the rear tray. Your settings may look a little bit different depending on your printer that you have. For media type, I always do photo because I want it to accommodate for thicker materials. So if you're printing on a cardstock, usually the photo paper setting will work really well. And then I boost my quality all the way up to best. So I have that turned on to best, and everything else is good to go. Once you're ready to print everything, make sure that you have your paper loaded in before you click print. And since my paper is already loaded, I'm just going to print that out and it will start printing. After it's printed, we are going to load our Cricut machine. So I am printing on medium cardstock. So I'm going to set my machine to medium cardstock, and then I will show you the printed version, and we'll get that cutting on the Cricut. One note, once you've printed everything out, make sure that you don't make any adjustments on your canvas, because if you make any adjustments, your print will be off. So if you need to make any changes, once you print it out, you will have to cut it, or you have to print a new one. So just make sure that you don't make any adjustments, move anything around, leave everything exactly how it is once you've printed it. Once your printer has printed everything out, you'll load that onto a light grip or standard grip mat in the upper left-hand corner. And I just burnished mine on with my hand to make sure that it's nice and secure, and then we'll load that into the machine. When you click the flashing C button, what the machine will do is it will go around and it will read this black box around the edge of your project. That black box tells your Cricut machine where those images are, and that's why it's very important that you don't adjust anything on your canvas once you've printed. So I'll speed this up. This is 10 times speed here, and it's detecting where that black box is, and then it will go around and cut out your labels perfectly. There's no guesswork on your part. And it is pretty quick. Obviously, this is sped up. You'll notice a little bit of shredding if you put your images this close together, but don't worry, it doesn't affect your project. The labels are actually just fine. The shredding will end up being left onto the mat. And I just gently roll my mat over and push my project away so that they don't get bent or warped at all. And then you can see here that it's perfectly centered and the corners are sharp and there is no shredding whatsoever. If for whatever reason your Cricut is not cutting properly, the images aren't centered, or it's cutting off, you can run a print then cut calibration, and I will link to a how-to tutorial in the video description. There's a really good help article on Cricut.com, so I will link to that. Now we're ready to put them into our label holder, so you'll want to make sure the clip is facing down, and then you can just easily slide those right into the label holder. They fit perfectly. These are the bins I used. I will link to them in the video description. I really like them. They had a great selection of colors, and they also have them in half sizes and full sizes. This is the half size here. They include a base to make them extra sturdy that you can just pop right in. To slide on the label holders, you just place them in the position that you want to put them in, and then you just push down. You can put them wherever you want. I decided to put them all under the handles, but if you want, you can apply them to the top as well. Overall, this project was really easy. It was a little bit labor intensive in setting up my project, but for future projects and future labels, all of the hard work is done, and now I just need to adjust the text file and then print and cut them. So hopefully you found this tutorial helpful. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.